नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्धस्स. So we will begin our class today. 1 minute. So we will begin our class today with part 2 of the book 7 of the Buddha and his Dhamma. And today we will be studying Living Vaishali. So we are now studying the last journey of the Buddha. And today we will be looking at the how Buddha traveled during the last days of his life. And here we are concerned about subpart 3 here. So part 2, Living Vaishali, is divided into 3 subparts. Farewell to Vaishali, so how the Buddha said goodbye to Vaishali, and then halt at Pava and arrival at Kushinara. So these are the 3 subparts that we are going to study today. So farewell to Vaishali, and this subpart begins with the Buddha's last journey. And before he set for his last journey, the Buddha, the Blessed Lord, was staying at Rajagraha on the Vulture's Peak. So this must be the last time the Buddha had stayed in one of his favorite places in Rajgriha, which is Vulture's Peak, the Griddhakuta. And there are many sutras in both Pali and Sanskrit tradition which are ascribed to this place of Griddhakut. And Griddhakut was one of the very favorite places of the Buddha. And even if we visit the Griddhakut today, it's a very beautiful place at the outskirts of the Rajgriha today. And Rajgriha was one of the urban areas of the time, at the time of the Buddha. And this is a very unique place where the Buddha stayed, and for a long time. And just beneath the foothills of these hills, there was the hospital of Jivaka, and even today we can find out the location of the Rajgriha. And in the place Vulture Peak, the Buddha used to stay in a cave, and we can find those natural caves even today. So that was the last time that Buddha was in the Rajgriha, as when he began his travel towards Kushinara. So after staying there for some time, he said, "Come, Ananda, let us go to Ambalatika." So that time Sariputra was gone, Mahamoglan was gone, and that was the time Ananda was a constant companion of the Buddha till his last breath. And he said to Ananda, "Come, Ananda, let's go to Ambalatika." And Anand gave his assent, saying that, "So be it, Lord, let's go." So with a large company of the brethren, monks, and nuns, we don't know about nuns, but surely there might be Bhikshuni Sangha that time in Rajagriha. So be it, Lord, said Ananda in assent, and the Blessed One with a large company of the brethren proceeded to Ambalatika. After staying at Ambalatika, he moved on to Nalanda. So we can trace out this journey of the Buddha, the last journey of the Buddha, starting from, he was in Shravasti, then he went to Rajagriha. From Rajagriha, he went to Ambalatika, and from Ambalatika, he went to Nalanda. And Nalanda is, of course, a place associated with Sariputra, where Sariputra was born. And in the same house, Sariputra chose to attain his Parinibban. So on the way, he might have visited Nalanda, the place of Sariputra. So he went to Nalanda, and from Nalanda, he went to Pataligrama, the present-day Patliputra or Patna, the capital of Magadha. And from Patliputra, he went to Kotigama, and from Kotigama, he went to Nadika. So these are all the names of the ancient towns and villages which are now forgotten, but we get an idea as to how the Buddha traveled from Rajagriha to Nadika. Now, seventh is interesting. At each of these places, he stopped for a few days and delivered a religious discourse, either to the brethren or to the householders. So, you see, the Buddha didn't stop being his own missionary, as Baba Ambedkar said, that the Buddha was his own missionary, and the Buddha didn't stop teaching the Dhamma till his last journey, last day. And here, the Buddha taught to the monks and nuns, and also to the householders. And from Nadika, he went to Vaisali. So Vaisali was, of course, a very important place in the history of the time. At the time, Vaisali was a very famous town, and it was the Lichavis city, the city of Lichavis, and the Lichavis were very fond of the Buddha. And how they became fond of the Buddha, there is a short story which Baba Ambedkar narrated here, which I'm going to read because it's not going to take a long time to read it. Vaisali was the birthplace of Mahavir and consequently a stronghold of his faith. But the blessed Lord soon succeeded in converting the people of Vaisali to his own faith. It is said that owing to drought, a famine ravaged the city of Vaisali to such an extent that people died in large numbers. So there was a famine due to drought in Vaisali, and people died in large number in Vaisali. And the assembly, after much discussion, decided to invite the blessed Lord to the city. The word assembly is very important because Vaishali was a republic, and Buddha was very fond of the Vaishali because it was a republic. And the assembly of the republic took a decision to invite the Buddha. So a Lichavi named Mahali, a friend of King Bimbisar and son of the chaplain of Vaisali, was sent to offer the invitation, and the blessed Lord accepted the invitation and started with 500 bhikkhus. So he started with 500 bhikkhus to go to the city of Vaisali. And as soon as he entered the territory of Vajjins, because it was a territory of Vajjins as well, there was a thunderstorm, rain fell in torrents, and famine disappeared. This is the origin of the welcome which the people of Vaisali gave to the Blessed Lord. So that's the background story as to why the people of Vaisali liked the Buddha so much, because of this incident. And having won their hearts, it was natural that the people of Vaisali should give him a warm response. Then came Vassa. So now, the Vassa was a very important time in that time. Even today, the tradition of Vassa is revived in Maharashtra, and a lot of Buddha vihars have Vassa or Vassa, because that was a rainy season time, and the Buddha didn't recommend his disciples to go out in the cities and the towns to beg, because that would disturb the farming practices. And the Buddha was very concerned of the various traits of the people. He didn't want to disturb people, and therefore he chose to stay at one place. And therefore he then came the Vassa and Varshavas, as we call it today, the rainy retreat. And the Blessed Lord went to Beluna for his Vassa and asked the brethren to make their Vassa in Vaishali. So he alone went to Beluna, and he asked the 500 monks to stay back in Vaishali for the Vassa. After finishing his Vassa, the Lord came to Vaishali with a mind to leave Vaishali and move on his journey. So the Blessed Lord early one morning robed himself, and taking his bowl, entered Vaishali for alms. So that was the practice he used to do. And when he had passed through Vaishali and eaten his meal, he gazed at Vaishali with an elephant's look and addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, "This will be the last time, Ananda, that the Tathagata will behold Vaishali." So you see, the word elephant's look is very interesting, because the Buddha is often equated with an elephant, and elephant that time was a very revered animal, and it was also a warship, because it used to be so much helpful to the kings, and it was the animal that everybody revered, and that was the prominent animal of the time. And there are fascinating books now explaining how the elephant was crucial for development of the time. And this word elephant's look is very interesting, because the Buddha looked like an elephant looks back at Vaisali, and he told Ananda that this will be the last time, Ananda, that Tathagata will behold Vaisali. And according to sources, and Baba Ambedkar himself has written, Buddha looked thrice back at Vaisali when he was leaving Vaisali. Such was the profound love of the Buddha for Vaisali, because many incidences of his life were related to Vaisali, And he really liked Vaisali so much that he looked back at Vaisali thrice. Thus saying, he bade farewell to the people of Vaisali. And there is now a royal pillar which stands still today, erected by Ashoka with the lion capital. A singular lion is sitting at the top of the stamba, Ashokan stamba, and it said that this is the exact place from where the Lord looked back at Vaisali 3 times. So you see, this is very interesting that whatever we read in the scriptures, there are all, evidences backed by the material sort of facts. And the Lord looked back at Vaisali, and the same spot from where the Lord looked back at Vaisali, there is the Ashokan pillar even standing today in Vaisali. And then, as his love for the people of Vaisali to the Lichavis, he gave his begging bowl as a memento. So you see, which is very special that the Buddha gave the begging bowl to the people of Vaisali. The begging bowl that the Buddha gave to the people of Vaisali became a legend, and a big stupa was erected there to commemorate that. And then it said that bowl was carried, several places all the way up to Gandhara. There are many stories about that begging bowl, but very important here to note that the Buddha gave as a memento his begging bowl to the people of Vaisali, to the Lichavis. And it was his last visit to Vaisali. He did not leave to return to it again. And Baba Ambedkar makes it a point in another of his writings that how important was the city of Vaisali for the Buddha, because it was a democracy, it was a republic, it was a people's kingdom, as it were. So after leaving Vaisali, the Buddha left for the place called Pawa. And the subpart 2 is about the Buddha's halt at Pawa. So from Vaisali, the Blessed Lord went to Bhandagam, and from Bhandagam, he went to Hattigam to Bhoganagara. Now, all these names are gone, but we can pick out some of the history that Hattigam was maybe related to the elephants, where the elephants might have been tamed. We don't know, but the name indicates that it was a very special place. And from Bhandagam, he went to Hattigam, to Bhoganagar, and from Bhoganagar, he went to Pawa. And Pawa is, today we can pinpoint where is the city of Pawa. And at Pawa, the Blessed One stayed at the mango grove of one blacksmith by name Chunda. Now Chunda heard that the Blessed One had come to Pawa and was staying in his mango grove, Amravan. So Chunda went to the mango grove and sat near the Blessed One, who gave him a religious discourse. And the Buddha, you say, it was his practice. Whoever came to the Buddha taught them the Dhamma. And he similarly taught the Dhamma to Chunda. And gladdened by it, Chunda addressed the Blessed One and said, "May the Blessed One do me the honor of taking his meal together with the brethren at my house tomorrow." So he extended the invitation for the meals next day to the Buddha and his Sangha. And the Blessed One signified by silence his consent. Seeing that the Blessed One had consented, Chunda departed thence. Next day, Chunda made ready his dwelling place, sweet rice, kheer, and cakes, and some preparation of Sukara Madhava. So he prepared a special dish for the Buddha and his Sangha called the Sukar Madhava. And he announced the hour to the Blessed One, saying, the hour, Lord, has come and the meal is ready. So he told the Buddha that the meal is ready, please come. He sent a word. And the Blessed One robed himself, and he put on his robe, and took his bowl, went with the brethren to the dwelling place of Chunda, and partook of the food prepared by him. So he took the food prepared by Chunda. Again, after the meal, the Blessed One gave a discourse on religion to Chunda, then rose from his seat and departed thence. And after taking his food, as was the practice, he gave the discourse to Chunda and left. The food offered by Chunda did not agree with the Blessed One. So there is a controversy. People say that it was pork which Chunda fed to the Buddha. Some people say that it was some kind of a mushroom that Chunda fed to the Buddha and the Sangha. But we won't involve into the controversy. But the point that the Buddha had a very strong bout of dysentery, and people say that there was a food poisoning. And there fell upon him a dire sickness, the disease of dysentery, and sharp and shooting pain came upon him even unto death. And the Buddha described the kind of pain that arose in his body because of this food poisoning or dysentery. And he said that the pain is unbearable, because it's like the pain was unto death. Such was the severity of the pain. But the Buddha told that because of his mindfulness and because he could detach from his body, he could bear that pain. But a normal person, wouldn't have been able to bear that kind of a pain that the Buddha bore that time. And because of his strong practice of mindfulness, that the Buddha could bear that unbearable pain. But the Blessed One, mindful and self-possessed, bore it without complaint. So you see the practices of mindfulness and what the Buddha taught, they can also become very important when we suffer from a severe pain. And there are now the whole science of it is being developed using the Buddhist practices, in the recent time, called a mindfulness based pain reduction or stress reduction. And so Buddha, we can see that in the Buddhism offers this kind of practices by which we can bear the unbearable pain. So returning to the mango grove, and after nature was relieved, the Blessed One told Ananda, "Come, let's go to Kushinara," and the party moved from Pava. So Buddha was sick and is moving from Pava to Kushinagar. So the third subpart is about arrival at Kushinara. So Buddha came to Kushinara, and we will look at it. The Blessed Lord walked for part of the way. He soon felt need for some rest. So Buddha was very tired. He was old. He was already 80 years old, and he was having this strong bout of dysentery. His stomach was upset, and he felt very, very severe pain in his body. But despite of that, he walked. And there is one incident which is not here in the Buddha and Dhamma, but one of the Buddhist scholar, Bharat Singh Upadhyay, he studied Buddhism for a long time, but he couldn't make sense of Buddhism for a long time. And he happened to come across this episode, which is very interesting, and I'm going to reveal that episode to you. Is the episode where Ananda was bathing the Buddha. And when Ananda was bathing the Buddha, he was commenting on the body of the Buddha that once upon a time your body shone like the gold, and today it's wrinkled, isn't it? So this episode, though appears to be very, very minor, has captured the heart of Bharat Singh Upadhyay, where he says that the Lord, the enlightened human being in the human body, which ages, which falls sick, to and the supernaturalness that attributed to the Buddha, has been exposed in terms of his very humanity, and the fact that we all human can embody or realize that enlightenment in this very body that has a nature of sickness, that has a nature of death, has hit so hard to Bharati Upadhyay that his heart was tuned to the Buddha. And this minor episode, but very significant, that the Buddha's body, and the Buddha has said in some places that his body is now like a bullock cart, which has now which is not firm, which is like disassembling, as it were. The Buddha's body was disassembling, and I think this is the beauty of Buddhism. It's not something what is called mysterious. The very experience of enlightenment can be had in this very body, which has these characteristics of sickness, old age, and of course the Buddha was old that time. The Buddha was 80 years old and his body was not well. So he soon felt the need for some rest, of course. And on the way, the Blessed Lord One went aside from the path to the foot of a certain tree and said to Ananda. So Buddha was tired and he chose not to travel, and he chose a tree underneath. Beneath it, Buddha sat, and he requested Ananda, "Fold, I pray you, Ananda, the robe and spread it out for me. I am weary, Anand, and must rest a while." So you imagine the Buddha. which we are, conditioned to see as a young man sitting under the Bodhi tree and, practicing. This is the image of the Buddha that we have. And in Mathura, there is an inscription which is very interesting. Before the Buddha image came into being, the Buddha was not represented in his human form. And of course, there was a debate as to how we can represent the Buddha, who is an enlightened being in the human form. So the sculptures came up with a solution. They said that we are going to only sculpt the Buddha before the enlightenment. So apparently, all the images of the Buddha we see are the images before the enlightenment. But even those images are very sublime. And you see, this is the old Buddha. And he was tired and he wanted to take rest, the human Buddha. And even so, Lord said, the Venerable Ananda in ascent to the Blessed One, and spread out the robe, folded fourfold. So you see, this robe is a large piece of cloth. So he folded up 4 times, making it like a cushion. And he prepared the Buddha's seat, and the Blessed One seated himself on the seat prepared for him. I think this must be one of the first times that the Buddha didn't prepare his own seat. And we have seen in the Buddhist text that the Buddha used to prepare his own bed, the Buddha used to prepare his own seat, the Buddha used to, bathe himself, he used to, do all his work himself. Though he had a lot of people to attend him, but he chose. And there is a teaching for us that we have to do our own duties. So as the Blessed One seated himself on the seat prepared for him, and when he was seated, the Blessed One addressed the Venerable Ananda and said, "Fetch me, I pray you, Ananda, some water. I am thirsty, Anand, and would drink." You see, the Buddha and Ananda has a very special connection. Just like the father and son, Ananda was, of course, young, and he lived for a longer time after the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. And he worked hard to spread the Dhamma after the Mahaparinirvana of the Buddha. But here is a very interesting message. The relationship between Ananda and the Buddha, very interesting relationship between the Venerable, Ananda and the Buddha. Now, Ananda replied, "This river Kakutha is not far off, is clear and pleasant, cool and transparent, easy to get down into and delightful. There the Blessed One may both drink the water and cool his limbs. The water of the stream is foul and turbid. The Blessed One was too weak to walk down to the river. He preferred to have the water of the nearby stream. So there might be a river by stream flowing, and the Buddha said that I am not in a position to walk up to that river Kakutta. And Ananda praised the water of the river in terms of clear, pleasant, cool, transparent, easy to get down, and delightful. But the Blessed One was too weak. There is a story, I don't know whether related to this. The Buddha sat perhaps in a meditation, and then Ananda left Buddha to bring water, and during that time, a lot of bullock carts passed, and the water was muddied of the river. The river water was muddied because a lot of bullock cart passed through the stream. And Ananda waited for the water to settle down so that he can take some water for the Buddha. And when he came back, Buddha was sitting in a meditation, and Buddha was in a deep sort of the meditative state. And apparently he told the Buddha that, he wake up the Buddha from his meditation and off to offer the water. And Ananda, apparently told Buddha that he was sorry that he was late. And he revealed a story that a lot of bullock carts passed through the river and the water was muddied. And it was not fit for drinking. It was not potable anymore. So he has to wait for a long time. And the Buddha apparently was not aware of what was going on around, because he was so deep. His sensory consciousness was cut off, as it happens in the first dhyana, that we disengage from the sensory world and engage with our mind with a profound focus. So this is by the way of telling you some very interesting story. I just put this here. It's not here in the Buddha and Dhamma, but we can imagine. You can imagine the scene. We can transport ourselves that time, and imagine what was happening there. So Ananda brought the water, and the Blessed One drank it. After resting for a while, the Blessed One, with the company of the brethren, went on to the river Kakutha. And when he had come there, he went down into the water, bathed, and drank. See, the old Buddha, our Lord, he went to the river Kakutha, and this river is still there. We can find out. I have seen this river Kakutha, and the place where the Buddha has taken his bath, and he drank the water from. The river is still there, and in Kusinara. And coming out again on the other side, he went on to the mango grove. And when he came there, he again asked his robe to be spread out, saying, I am weary, and would lie down. The robe was accordingly spread out, and the Blessed One laid himself down on it. So the Buddha chose to take rest after taking the bath and after drinking the water. After resting for a while, the Blessed One got up and said to Ananda, let's go on to the Sala Grove of the Mallas, the Upavana of Kushinara, on the further side of the river Hiranyavati. So the river Hiranyavati is still there in Kusinara. And if you go on a pilgrimage and happen to visit Kusinara, you can see the river Hiranyavati even today. And the Buddha chose to go to the Sala Grove from the mango grove. The Buddha chose to go to the Sala Grove. On reaching the place in the company of Ananda, he again asked Ananda to spread his robe between the twin Sala trees. You see, the Sala trees are very interesting trees. If you go to the North India, you can see these big, massive trees, which you can see even today. And the Sala forest is all over the places in the northern India. So the Buddha asked between there is this between the Sala trees, such a metaphor, and there is the last sermon of the Buddha between the two Sala trees. It's found in the Chinese version, where the Buddha gave the last sermon between the two Sala trees. Very profound sort of teaching that the Buddha gave, and it's not available in the Pali Suttas. In Pali Suttas, we have Mahaparinirvana Sutta, which details out the story. But between the two Sala tree, the Buddha gave a very beautiful sermon, which is available even today in the Chinese language. And I got a copy of it, but I don't know whether it's shareable. But this is a very beautiful sutta that the Buddha delivered. The very essence of the Dhamma distilled down as to how we should hurry up to practice the Dhamma, why it's important for us to practice the Dhamma. So I particularly like this image of Buddha in the Sala grove between the two Sala trees. Buddha, on a bed prepared of the robe, in forming a small cushion that the Buddha is lying, and giving a talk. The old Buddha giving the talk. So on reaching the place in the company of Ananda, he again asked Ananda to spread his robe between the twin Sala trees. I am weary and would lie down. Ananda spread the robe, and the Blessed One laid himself down on it. So I'm not going to go further today. I'm going to begin the next part 3 in the coming weeks. But today, I think these two subparts gave us an idea of the efforts of the Buddha, the humanity of the Buddha, his quest to teach the Buddha Dhamma to the people, his very essence of his life to spread the teachings, Dhamma, so precious to the humanity. And Buddha was a teacher who was striving hard to awaken the humanity. And this heart of the Buddha is so important for us to understand. And I think what Baba Ambedkar has done with this inclusion of this last journey of the Buddha is to tell us, how the Buddha, even till his last breath, was striving to communicate, was striving to teach, was striving to spread the teachings that are so precious. It's said that it's very difficult to it's very difficult to get the human birth, and it's very difficult to encounter the Buddha. It's very difficult even to put in practice the Buddha's teachings, and to realize is very rare, the rarest of the rare. thing to happen for a human being. And I think these three subparts kind of give us a glimpse into the heart of the Buddha and his friendship with Ananda, his mind, which is not discriminatory, choosing to eat anywhere, and very humanity of the Buddha in terms of the hardships that the Buddha faced. So I will stop here and I will open up the class for any discussion, any comment, any reflection from any of you.
In part 2, verse 12, the Sukar Madhva preparation must have been offered to the Sangha also.
Yes.
So the bhikkhus of the Sangha were not affected by that mix. So it might be the reason that because Buddha was too old at that time, 80-year-old. So that might be some cause of this, because he becoming ill after eating that meal, and not because of any problem.
Very good point. Very good point. And the Buddha was old, and we can understand his body, and so it might not have affected other people, but it affected the Buddha. But we don't know whether it was food, because the Buddha, told Ananda not to blame Chunda. He said that it's not the fault of the Chunda, because sometimes Chunda is blamed for feeding the Buddha with Sukara Madhava. And as I said, there is a controversy over what is Sukar Madhava. Some people claim that it was pork. Some people claim that it was some kind of a mushroom. And I think this is not so important. What is important that the Buddha had a tremendous amount of body pain. He was suffering, and it was the Buddha only who could handle such kind of a severe pain that came to his eating this food. But that's a very good point, Alka madam, that other people didn't suffer and the Buddha suffered. So any comment, anything from any of you? See, I think the Buddha and Dhamma is designed in a way that it begins with the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and again comes back to the Buddha. And the Baba Sahib says that the Buddha didn't speak much about him, and the latter generation found the life of the Buddha very, very important for their practices. And I think it's very important to know the teacher in such a depth and details, because the Buddha was a human being who was awakened, and to study the life of the awakened one itself is a teaching for us to know how they lived. Such is the case with the study of the life of the Bodhisattva, like Baba Sahib Ambedkar. To know his life is such inspiring for us. We begin to get the pointers to our own lives as to how we should live our lives. And I think that's the reason the Baba Sahib Ambedkar has chose to talk about the Buddha's life. He was very fond of talking about the Buddha's life, how great was the Buddha. And these parts in the Buddha and his Dhamma are very important. The Buddha and Dhamma is dense with very important teachings, but it also includes the life of the Buddha, at length and at details that we have seen. And I think that itself becomes a guide for us to constantly go back to the life of the Buddha, to read the biography of the Buddha. And there are now some biographies of the Buddha available, drawn from the Pali texts and some other texts, which are very important for us to study, to understand our teacher, the Buddha. Same applies with Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and the same goes on for the great people. And they kind of inspire us. Even the biographies of the disciples of the Buddha, like Sariputra, Moglan, Ananda, Then Bhikshunis, the biographies of the Bhikshuni, Mahaprajapati itself. And her life itself is such an inspiring life. And Yashodhara and Khema and all this, the small biographies that we have seen in the Buddha and Dhamma, but as Buddhist, we have to also study the treasure, the third treasure, the Sangha treasure. And they are called treasure because without any, not because they are just treasures. They provide some valuables to us. So studying the life of the great people, all the great people in the history of the Buddhism, is such an inspiring thing. And it can be equated to the practice of the Buddhism itself. There are some comments here, and let me read some comments here, which are Vidyan says that it has been popularly told that the Sukar Madhava is the pork dish. How true it is? So we don't know the veracity of it, is whether it was a mushroom or whether it was a kind of pork. The Buddha told to bury the remaining of food, not to offer to others. That's what Dr. Sunil Dahiwale has commented. This says that it was a sukar, it was to be buried and not to be offered to others. So apparently only the Buddha partook the food. And Dr. Dipti says it was mushroom. Sometimes mushroom can be poisonous, which the Buddha knew, but still he ate the food, not to blame the host who cooked the food. So the Buddha asked the remaining food to be buried. I read it somewhere. Then Vidyanand is further commenting, Buddha in fact told that the 2 meals has importance, first by which he attained enlightenment and the second by which he attained Nibbana. So these are all the very beautiful comments which have been made by some of the people who are in the class. So I think that's it. Unless anyone has anything to say, we can wait, or if not, then we will finish our class today and we will meet next week. Okay, then see you in the next class next week.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.
Jai Bhim, sir.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim.
Jai Bhim.